Hello guys, welcome back to our demo for this week. In this demo, we're going to see how we can manage user roles. So we're going to be assigning, removing, and managing user roles in our application, right? So if you remember the one we created last time, the last video we did was the one on JWT. We noticed that our user here, the role we have here was just a kind of empty, just ordinary string. It's just a string right here. Let me zoom in. Remove this. So we see that the row is just a string here. So what we're going to do in this demo is just actually we're going to dedicate this row to a separate API where we can have all the necessary operations, all the necessary methods and operations that we can use to manage these rows for our users. Right. So after that, having said this, now I'm just going to come here. I'm going to come here and create a new package. So the package here, I'm just going to call this as row. This one here, I'm just going to say row. And this row here, I'm going to right click and create a class called row. Row. And now this row here, what we just need here is the ID. So we're going to have private, the ID. And we're going to have private, the name here. And we know because this one is going to be an entity, so we're just going to have some annotations here as usual. So the entity annotation, the getter, setter, and here this is the JPA annotation, and the Lombok annotations. So these are the ones we're just going to have here. What is the matter? Okay, let's import the classes. Yeah, import, and this one too. Import. Why is my IntelliJ not importing automatically? Okay, cool. So now this is what we have here, and we're going to set the ID. So the ID, and we're going to set the generated value just as usual. This is what we used to do every time in our demo, right? So this one has become so familiar with us. So now we're going to set the strategy here as ID, this one here. And the next thing we're going to do here is to set this email as natural ID. So this email can actually serve as the ID of the user, right? Okay, so this is what we got here. And because now this row here is going to have a relationship with the user, right? So we're going to have the object of the user here. This one here, I'm going to make it a collection because one user can have multiple rows, and one row can have multiple users assigned to it, right? So here we have collection of users. We'll just call this one as users. This. So let's do the import. So now before we move from here, I'm going to generate a constructor for this explicitly. This one here, I'm just going to do this here, and we're going to come back to this in a moment. So let's go to the user here. Okay, so now we're going to change this one here from ordinary string to a collection of rows. Collection of rows. So this one is going to be row, right? And I'm just going to do something. Okay, let me take the import here from our own, and I'm just going to do something here, like just going to instantiate it here. New hash set. It's going to be set. We're going to make it a set, right? And this one as well, I'm going to do same. This one here. Okay, so now we're going to come back here in a moment. So we're going to go back to the user here. So now, because what we're going to do here is that the user should be able. The user is one user can have multiple rows, and one row can have multiple users, right? So now we're going to define a many-to-many entity relationship between these two entities. So we're just going to say at many-to-many. Here we use this annotation, and we are going to set this one to eager, the fetch to eager, fetch type.eager. This eager here, it means whenever we fetch a user, it's going to fetch all the rows of the users along. By default, this one here is lazy fetch, is lazy, right? It fetch lazily like this by default. So, but because we need this one by to fetch eager, so that's why we define this specifically. Everything to many, one to many, many to many, anything to many is lazy by default. But now in our application, in this very requirement, we want a situation whereby we fetch a user and we also fetch all the associated rows of that user right along. So now we are going to cascade. We're going to pick some options of cascade here. So the first one we're going to have is persist. So we're going to persist. The next one we're going to merge, and the final one we're going to pick here is detach. We're going to detach this one here. So these are the three we just need for this our application here. I'm going to break it down like this. So now we are done with this, and because this entity is going to have many-to-many relationship, so for that we need a third table to actually join together these two entities, these two classes. So for that we're going to have the adjoint table here, adjoint table, and we're going to specify this table name. User rows, and we're going to specify the columns that are going to be there. This is column, and specify the name. So this one is going to be user ID. And this user ID is going to reference the ID of the ID right here. Sorry, it's going to reference the ID of the user. So reference column name, we're just going to point this to the ID here. Then we're going to define the inverse, which is the other side of the relationship. And here we do the same, adjoint column. I'm sorry, this here. And this one is row, let's say this one is row ID. And also it's going to reference the ID of the row. All right. So this is what we need, because this row here is having a many-to-many relationship with a user, which means one row can be assigned to many users, and many users can be assigned to one row, right? So we have many-to-many here, and this cascade option here is actually defining what happened to this. For example, when we save a user with a row, the row is going to be cascaded down to the row table, right? And if we delete a user, it's going to be cascaded down to the row that the user is handling, right? Now this is the third table, because we are using many-to-many, so we have to make use of the adjoint table to actually track the relationship between these two guys. I'm going to break something down here. Let me break this down. Okay, cool. So now we have the adjoint table to actually define the third table to actually join these two entities together. So let's go back to the row, and so what we're just going to do here is to use the same annotation, many-to-many, and now we're going to map by the rows here. So this is all we need to do here at the other side. I'm going to reformat. I'm going to format this code. Just go here and format code. And this one too, I'm going to format, reformat code. Okay, cool. So now it looks nice. Now this one here, I'm coming back here. You see that we just have at map, we map by this row here, we map this row here. Now this one actually means that this guy here is going to inherit everything that is here. So all the declaration we made here is going to apply to this user here. That is why we are mapping it there, right? And now the user side become the parents of the relationship. Okay, so now this is what we just need here. So the next one we're going to do is to create the service class, of which we are going to define every method we're going to be using in this demo. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is to I'm just going to close this down for now. Let me zoom out. And now I'm going to, what is it? So here I'm going to right click on the row package and create another class. So this one here is going to be the row service. So we're going to, this way we're going to declare all the method signature we're going to be using throughout this, demo. So now the first method we're going to create here is a method to actually list every user, sorry, not users, every row we got in the database. So here we have the row. I'm going to, Java util. This one is row. So I'm going to call this one get row. Get all rows. And the next one we're going to create is a method to actually create a new row. So here we have create row, and we're going to pass in the row objects. What is happening here? Add method body. Oh, sorry. This one is an interface. Yeah. The next one we're going to create is a method to actually delete. Void is going to be void delete row, and this one here is going to take the ID of the row we're going to delete. So let's put row ID, specified clearly, right? And next we're going to define another one that we actually let's say we're going to call this one find by name. It's like find row by name, right? And we're going to pass in the name string. And another one here is just like it's going to be like this here. I'm just going to duplicate this, and I change this to find by ID, and here I'm just going to change this to the ID. I'm going to call this one row ID. Row ID is correct. And the next one here we're going to delete. We're going to create. Why did I say that? So the next one we're going to create is a method that will actually remove a user from a row, right? This one here, I want this one to return the user, so that after the user has been removed from row, I want to see the user back to confirm that the user has actually been removed. So this one we're going to call removed. Remove user from row. So this one here we're going to get two things here. We're going to get the user ID we're going to remove, and we're going to get the row ID that we're going to be removing the user, right? So it's of type long as well, so we'll just say row ID here. The next one we're going to do is a method that we actually assign a row to user. So it's going to take the same parameter. That's why I just duplicate that, because it's taking the same. Assign user to row. And then the last one we're going to be creating. Now let's take for example, we want to delete a row. Now deleting a row in this context is like, because the row actually has a relationship with a user. So before we can delete a row, we have to remove every user that row has been assigned to. We have to remove them before we can delete. If not, we cannot delete the row. So now the method that will actually help us remove all the users is what I'm trying to create here. We're going to see how all of them works later. This one is user. Remove all user from row. Let me make it clear so that the reader will just understand what the method is doing. And this one is going to take the row ID. Row ID. This one here. That's okay. I think for now, these are the method we actually need right now. So what we're just going to do here is to actually create the implementer, a class that will actually implement this very interface we just created. So we're just going to call this one here. We're going to call this one here row service, and this one is going to implement the very interface, the service interface we've just created. So we just say implement row service, and here I'm just going to use Alt enter and enter again and enter again to just implement all the method that we have created in there. So this is all we got. So now the next thing we're going to do here is to actually implement all these methods and see how they're going to work for us. So the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to actually need our row repository to actually persist to the database, right? So now we just say row repository, okay, we have not actually created this repository. Is that correct? Repository is correct, right? So we just say row repository, right? Now what we're just going to do here is to actually say row repository to find all. So this is what we got here. Now let's actually create this one here. IntelliJ is going to help us to create this. So let's specify the package we're going to create it for in. So we're going to create it inside this row package, right? Now we're just going to, you see here the parent here is JPA repository, and the name of the class is row repository. So let's just hit on create, and we see that IntelliJ has created everything for us. So thank you, IntelliJ. Now we see that this error is gone. So let's move forward. Let's move forward to actually create this one here, to implement this one here, that is going to actually create save new rows to the database. So now we just got the row repository dot save, right? It's just a straightforward method. Then we pass in the row like this. Now we're just going to do some check before we save this to the database. We're just going to check if that row we're trying to create already exists. So for that, we're just going to do this check here. We're going to make an optional row here. Let's just say check row equals row repository dot find by, we're going to find this one by name, find by name. This is not, so we're going to pass in the name of the row that the admin or that the person is going to create. We're going to pass in the name to check if that row is already in existence in our database. .get name here. Now if this row already exists here, let me just do something. Let's create this method first here, right? Cool. So now if this row already exists, we're going to send a message back to the user to let them know that the row you're trying to create is already in existence in our database, right? So we just say if the row is present, if row is present, if it's present, then we should should alert the user that this row is already present. So we're going to throw something here. We're going to cache this one here. So new row already exists. Exception, right? This one is a class that we're going to create in a moment. So now we're just going to define some things here, like just send a simple message here. Row already exists. Already exists here. So now we're just going to, let's just take the name of the row. Row.getName plus. So for example, we just okay, the admin row already exists, right? So that is what we just want to do here. Yeah, actually, we're just going to, let's make use of this one here. Rather, let's make use of this and get, right? So before we move further, let's create this exception class. In the exception, create a class. We're going to put this in the exception package. Remember in our previous video we actually create this exception package here, and we define a lot of exceptions here. So you can just watch those videos to actually see how we get about creating all those, right? So this one here is I'm going to make this extend the runnable, move to new line, and let's actually insert a constructor. Let's just take this one here. Done. So this is just all we need here. So let's go back here and we'll say the error is gone away. So this is all we need here to actually create a new row, to actually save a new row to the database. So now what we're just going to do here is to delete. Let's implement the delete. So like I explained previously, so before we can delete a row, we're actually going to do some other things, because this row here, if it happens that this row is already assigned to users, we can't just delete the row like that. The first thing we're going to do is to remove those users from this row, then we delete the row. So that's what we're going to do. Now, for that, I'm going to come back here to create a covenant method that will actually help us to actually remove all users from the row so we can delete. So going back to the row entity here, I'm going to create a covenant method here that will help us to do that job. So just here we'll say public void remove all users from row. So this is what this row is going to be doing, and this one is not going to take any parameter. So let's go in. Now we're going to get a hold. We're going to grab this very let's say. So we're going to grab this very row to check some things there. So let's say if this, which is this very row here, so if this get users, if this get users not equal none, not equal none. So if this one, if the row we want to delete, if we're going to check if that row has users that have been assigned to it, right? So now if it has users, then we're going to take all the users and put them into a list, right? Like so. So we just take them and put them to a list. So we have user in row. So let's say users in row. Yeah, users in row equals this. This dot get users. So we're going to stream this into a list, right? stream to list, like so. And now after that, then we're going to remove every users. So we're just going to say user dot for each. So we're going to loop through all the users and actually remove everything here. So we'll just say user and remove all. And there's a method I'm going to create here. Not this here. So I'm going to create a new method here that will actually do this job for us. So remove user from row. So this one is going to be a new method here we're going to create now. So now let us create this very method here that will actually remove this user from row. So let's just create the method here. So now this one is going to take the object of the user, right? So we're just going to go here to say user dot get rows dot remove. So we're going to remove this, remove this, remove this, and we're going to go this dot get users dot remove. So we're going to remove this as well, remove the user here. So this is the method that we actually, this method here is we're going to make use of this method later, so I'm going to make it public. I'm going to make it public. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to make this public because we're going to make use of it later in another part of this application. So for now, we are going to, this method here is to remove every user from the row. This one here is to remove one user from the row, right? So now let's have, before we just move from here, let's take this opportunity to create another method that will actually help us to assign a row to the user. So this one is going to be void method as well. Here we say assign user to row, or assign row to user. It's all the same thing, right? So this one also is going to take the object of the user here, like so, and it's just the same thing what we've done here, but just the opposite part of it. So just to reverse, just copy and paste here, and instead of remove we say add, right? Like so, add, like so. So this is the method that will help us to assign row to the users, to a user, and this is the method that will help us to remove a user from row. This is the method that will help us to remove all users from a row, right? So that is what we got. So now let's go back to our service. Let's go back to our service, our row service, to actually implement this delete. So now we are going to make use of the method, which, where is it here? This is the signature of that method, right? So that's what we're going to make use of here. So let's just quickly, we're going to implement this one first before we go back to actually implement, to actually make use of it there. So the first thing we're going to do here is to actually get this row. So for that, we're going to have an optional row. So we're going to call this row, right? So equals row repository. So now we're going to find this one by ID, right? Row repository. Oh, sorry, this is row repository. Come on, this one here. Find by ID. This one here. We're going to pass in the row ID, like so. So now we're just going to say, okay, if this row is found, then let's remove all the users that is there, right? So where is it? Row. So we just say row dot, if the row is present, then we just say, okay, remove every users in there. Dot remove all users here. So this one here is this method we created here. What is it? This one here, you see it's highlighted already because we are using it already. So that's what we're doing right now, right? And after that, we're going to when the row is being removed, then the next thing we're going to do is to actually save the row. So we should save the row back. So we just say row repository, this one here, dot save. Just save. So this one we just say row, not row ID. Where is this row ID coming from? Okay, this one here. Let's save. So it's optional, right? So we say dot get. This optional extra get is really getting me pissed off. Okay, cool. So this is what we need to do to actually remove every user from the row, right? So now let's go. I'm going to close this gap a little bit. So now let's go back to the delete method. So what we're just going to do here is to actually call the method we've just implemented to actually do the job for us. So we just say this dot remove all users. This one here, remove all users from row. So we just pass in the row ID like so, right? So after that, we call the repository to actually delete the row. Repository.delete by ID, right? So let's pass in the row ID to be deleted. Boom. So that is all we need to do here. Okay, like easy, right? Cool, of course. So now we have implemented this. So let's move to the next method here, this one, to find by ID. It's just a straightforward one. So let's just call the row repository to actually find by ID and path. Oh, sorry, this is find by name, right? Find by name here and pass in the name. And this one here is optional, right? So we're going to give this extra get again here to make it happy. Okay, cool. Now this one is find by ID. The same process. Dot find by ID. Find by ID. This time is going to be the ID. So we're just going to pass in the row ID here. And so the same get. The same get. Then now these remaining two here, they're kind of similar. So now what we're just going to do, the first thing we're going to do here is to have the optional. What is it? I did something here. Okay, let me not copy so I don't make mistakes. So there's a danger in copy and paste sometimes. So here I'm just going to have the optional here. So we're going to find the user, right? User, optional user here. And we're just going to say user equals. So now we're going to have we're going to call the user repository here. Private final. We're going to make this one final. I user repository. The interface of this that we created. We code it to interface, right? So let's call this one user service. I want to use this opportunity to finish up from here. Let me just make this one final. So now we're going to do constructor injection here. So now I'm going to use the Lombok annotation as usual at required arg constructor here. So this annotation, like I used to say, this annotation here, we only inject any field that is final, non-static fields that are final. That is what this one is going to do here. So these two here and they are non-static field and they are final. So it's going to inject these two in the constructor. So assuming we have another field here like this, for example, We have another field here that is not finer, for example, that is not finer. This one is not going to be injected. It's not going to be ejected. So it's only going to be eject these two here, right? So that is the job of that annotation. Now I'm just going to use this opportunity to put this service annotation before we forget. It's easy to forget, so we're going to get error later when we run the application. So now let's go back here and make use of the user service dot find by ID. We're going to use dot find. I think we don't have this. We don't have this this one there. So because of that, I don't really want to declare this method in there. So I'm going to use, instead of the service, I'm going to use the repository, user repository, this one here. So just get it directly. So there's no need of declare, because if we do this, if we use the service here, it means we are going to declare another method inside the service class. But I don't want to do that. I just want to use the repository direct. So here we just have repository.find. You see here, we just get it directly from here, .find by ID. And here we're going to pass in the user ID, like so. And I think we're going to use the extra get as well to make it happy. This one, does it work, right? Okay, so let's see what it wants. So this one here is going to change type to row. Oh. Sorry, it's supposed to be user repository, not row. Cool. And then we're going to return the user, right? Oh, no, not yet. We're not going to return the user. I'm sorry, this is the method we're implementing. So now we have gotten this here. So the next we're going to do here is to get the row. So this one is going to be the same process. So I'm just going to duplicate this and change this one to row, right? And change this one to row. And this one here is going to be the row ID, right? And now we're going to call that row repository that we called earlier. Put it here, find by ID. And then we're going to make a check here. Now what we're doing here is to remove a user from a row. So now we're going to check. The first thing we're going to check is that if that row is present, if there is a row with that ID, and if that user is inside that row, then remove the user, right? Just as easy as that. So now let's say if row is present, if the row is present and the user, and that user is inside the row get user contain, we're going to use the contain object, which is that user. Now if that row contains this user, we're going to make it .get because it's optional. Now if that row is present and that row and this user here is among the user that is inside this row, then we're going to remove it. So what we're just going to do here is to just say row dot remove row dot get, this extra get of a thing, row dot get dot remove user from row. So we're going to have this here, and we're going to pass the user object there, and with the get dot get, because it's optional, right? So after that, what we're just going to do here, we're going to return the user. Sorry, yeah, let me see. So we have removed the user from the row. Then we're going to save back the row. Before we return, we're going to save back the row. So we say we're just going to call the row repository dot save. So we're going to save the row back to the database, save the row, and we're going to pass in the row dot get, like so. Here, then after that, just like I said, the reason why I'm returning the user here, I want, when everything is done, I want to actually see the user back to be sure that I think we're supposed to have braces here. Supposed to have braces here, like so, like so. So I'm going to remove this here, like so, and then we're going to return the user. So for us to verify that the user has been removed from that row, right? Then if that's not the case, we're going to we're just going to throw something here, though this one is not the appropriate. We're going to throw let's just throw new user not found, but this is actually not what we try to throw here, but for now let's just use it. It's supposed to be of a better name that will actually display a message to the user, right? User not found. Now I'm using this exception class because we've already created this last time in the last video we had. We've already created all this one inside this package here, right? Inside this exception package here. Now what the exception with the message we're returning here now is not showing that user not found. Now which means if all this process, all these criteria are not met, it should say user not found. But actually it's not user not found. Maybe row is not found or user is not found, something like that. But because I don't want to define any other class that we do that work. But you may, if you like, you can just declare a custom, a dedicated class to actually throw an appropriate message to the user, giving the message of what happened here, right? But for this demo purpose, I'm just going to throw this one here, that user is not found. So what we just did here is that the first thing here, we're going to remove a user from row. The first thing we did, let's actually find, we have given the user ID and the row ID. So now how do we know that this user actually exists? So we are finding this user in the database, right? And after that, we now find the row from the database. Now we say that if the row is found, if there is a row in database with that ID, now let's check the users that are inside that row, if it contains this user here. Now, if that is true, then remove that user. And after removing the user, save the row back to the database, right? And return that user for us to check whether the row has actually been removed. Then if not, just say user is not found. So that's all. Now the next, which is the last one we're going to create, is similarly to this. So for that, I'm just going to copy this here, similar to this. So now I'm just going to copy and paste this here, and for this one we're going to check, we're going to pass through the check, just like what we did the last time there from the previous one here. So now we're just going to say if user, because right now we actually assign user to the row, right? So if user if the user is present, right? If the user is present, so if user dot is present, right? And user dot get rows dot contains, if it contains this row here, row dot get, it's just the same thing we did a few seconds ago, right? But it's just the opposite side. So now what we're doing here, that if if the user is present, now let's check the rows of that user. If that user has been assigned this row, then we're just going to tell the user, the assignee, or the assigner, or how would they call it, that the person that is assigning this row to the user. So we're just going to tell that person that, hey, this user is already inside that row, so there's no need of assigning him twice, right? So Now, if this condition is met, so we're going to throw the message here. So throw new, so we're going to call this one new user already exists exception. So now we're just going to get the name of the user. We're going to get the name of the user, user.get name. We'll get the first name of the user, maybe. Yeah, the first name plus. So we're going to have this plus sign here. Plus is already assigned. This message is too long. Assigned to. So let me break this down. Let's break it down here. Assigned to the. So now let's get plus. So let's get the row. Row dot get name. Sorry. Dot get name, like this. So we get it like so. So I'm just going to zoom this out so we explain it. So what we just did here is that here we find the user. So we say if the user is present, right? Now let's get the rows. Let's check if that row is already assigned to the user. So if that row is actually assigned to the user, for example, the user is already an admin, and we want to assign admin row to this user, then we should tell the person that, hey, for example, we try to assign Jean to admin row. We're just going to say, okay, Jean is already assigned to the admin row, right? So for that, we're just going to have another plus here to actually complete the message admin row, like so. So this is all we need. So for now, I think we are finished here. So after that, we've not finished, sorry. So now if that user has not been assigned to the row, then let's carry on with the process of actually assigning the user to the row. So what we're just going to do here is to just to say row dot if present. So if the row is present as well, then let's actually assign the user to the row. So just say row dot. I don't like row one. Let me just say the row. The row here, and let's say the row dot assign user. This one here, assign user to row. So we're going to pass in the user, right? User dot get. So now after that, after the user has been assigned to the row, then we're going to save the row back to the database. So here we're just going to call the row repository. The row repository dot save. So we're going to save it back to the database. So we're just going to say the row dot get. Yeah. Okay. So then after that, we're going to return the user for us to check. This one is not necessary anyway. It's not necessary. So we can just put here row and just return row dot save, right? But I just want to use this extra return to actually return the user, to check if that row has been assigned to it or not, right? So here I'm going to terminate there. Okay, so I think we have finished implementing our methods, right? Yes, we are finished with the implementation. So the next one we're going to do here is to actually go to the controller. It's actually come here to create a controller to consume all these that we have actually created, right? Okay, so let's go and create the controller. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is to actually create the controller for this for our row. So I'm just going to close down all these here, close down all these. What happened here? Remove all users from row. Make method void. Um, remove all user from row. No, we're gonna return the row. We're not gonna make it void. What is it? Remove all users from row. Remove all users from row. Yeah. Okay, no problem. We're gonna get back to this later if there's a problem. Okay, so what we're just gonna do here is to right click on the row package and create the row controller. Row controller. Role controller here. And now, like every other controller is going to be a REST controller. Because of that, we're just going to, it's going to be a REST controller, and we're also going to inject some dependencies here. So I'm just going to put this annotation to and do the import here. So here, request mapping and the Lombok construct, the Lombok annotation that will actually help us to inject, to do our constructor injection. So what we just need here is the row service. We need the row service here, private row service here, and we just say row service like so. Okay, after this, now we're just going to, the first one we're going to implement here is the method to actually return every row we have in our database. I'm going to use response entity here. Response entity, list of row. Respond with the list of row here, and I'm just going to get all rows. Get all rows, right? Like so. And so let's do the import. There's an import we need to do here. Okay. And for this one here, we're just going to return the new response entity. Return a new response entity, and we're just going to call this one here as row service dot get all rows. I think that is the name of the method over there. Get all rows. And here we're going to do a kind of a static import here. We're going to get HTTP status code here created, and let's import the static class, and let's see here, yeah, HTTP status, right? Okay, so now this is what we need to do here. So the next one we're going to implement this one. Before we move ahead, we're just going to annotate this as get mapping, yeah. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to say this one is, sorry, I'm going to say this one is all, like so. So next, let's go down and so we're going to implement a method to actually create a new new row, right? To actually create a new row. And I'm going to say this one, create. Copy and paste is dangerous. Make sure if you are copy and pasting like me, make sure you edit it appropriately to avoid error at runtime, right? So now we're just going to say create row, and here we're going to have the row object. We'll have the row, right? And now what we just need to do next is to actually request the body. Request body of the row. Then so then we're going to actually what we're going to do here is to create, right? Yeah, create row. And here we're going to pass in the row object like so. This one is row is here, yeah. And this one we're going to say, oh, this is created, this is found, sorry. We're going to make this one found because we're getting objects from the database. So if we just bring anything we found from the database, if we found anything, then we're going to create, this one is going to say created if it's created successfully. Okay, so the next one we're going to do here is to, sorry, excuse me, please, I'm sorry. I'm still going to copy and paste. I'm still going to copy this method and paste it here. Then we actually, now there's a problem here because this one here is supposed to be post. So like I said, if you want to copy and paste, please make sure you edit properly. Now for this one here, we're going to say delete. We're going to delete a row. So this one here, we don't have to. There's no need of returning anything here. So we're just going to make this one void. Right? Make this one void, and this one is going to be at delete mapping, and we're going to say delete, and the ID of what we're going to delete, which is the ID of the row we're going to set here. Now we're going to have path variable here. Path variable, we're going to create this one as the ID, and this one is going to be long, and we call this one row ID, right? Row ID. So here we're just going to say delete row, and we pass in the row ID like so, and here we're just going to say okay. Yeah, we're just going to say okay. Import static from here, let's have it from here. So this one is we're not returning anything, so let's remove this, and actually let's remove this because we're not returning anything, right? Okay, so now this is all we need to actually delete. How many have we implemented? Oh, just 3. So we still have more 3 to implement. Okay, let's dig into it. Very soon we'll be done. So now the next one here is another method that will actually help us to remove all users from the row. So this one we're just going to say row, right? Row, and we're going to say this one as remove all users or users from row. Remove all users from row. And this one here, we're going to have the row ID, right? So here we just have long row ID. And this one is going to be a path variable. So let's have it as this path variable, and this is going to be ID, and we're going to specify here, this one is going to be post, right? Post, and so here we're going to specify the endpoint as remove all users from row. Then the ID of the row we're going to specify here, this one here. There is something okay, this is correct. So there is something I would like to call your attention to. This one here, this ID, and whenever you are declaring a path variable like this, make sure this ID, what you are putting in here, is the same thing with this one here. Now, if for example we have this one here as ID like this, we don't need to do this one. This one we might not need to we can just do it like this, right? It will work because this one here is the same thing with this. It will work. But if we are defining something different from here, like row ID like this, it's not going to work. So now we see that There's an error here. Create a path variable. Now let's take it back again and see ID like this. You see, it is gone. So make sure this name here and this one actually correspond. So I'm going to make this one here as usual. Then we are going to declare our path variable here. Inside here, inside here, we're going to say ID. At runtime, the method, the value that is here is going to pass in here, be interpolated. It's going to be interpolated in here, right? So that is the secret behind it. So now what we're just going to do here, after that, we're going to actually call the service to actually remove all users from the row. So let's just say row service. Row service dot remove all users. This one here, remove all users. So we say row ID. So this one is just return. We're going to return it. Okay, so we are done with this. So the next one we're going to implement, which is the second to last, we're going to implement is the one that we actually remove a single user from the database. Sorry, not database. Remove a single user from the row, right? So let's have another public method. Remember, this one last time is returning a user object, right? Because after removing the user, we're going to send back the user for us to actually see if the user has been removed, right? So remove user from row. And this one here last time we have two parameters. So one is let's make it clearly so we know which is which. So user ID and the row ID here. And these two here, they're going to be request param. So let's say at request. Request param is going to be user ID. We'll just make it the same thing. And we are going to break this down. This one also is a request param here. So we say request param, and we're going to the same. So this one is going to be the row ID, right? Now we're going to let's do the import. Yeah, from our user. So this one also is going to be post mapping, like so. So it's going to be post mapping. But meanwhile, I'm just going to let me take this one in full, because it's going to be similar to that. So let's remove this and paste this one here. So this one here is remove user from row. So remove user, let's edit this, remove user from row. So the same thing, remove user from row. Then this one has no ID, has no path variable, because here we're just having params, not path variable here, because there are two. Okay, so now what we're just going to do here is to actually call the service to return, to actually do the job for us. So just say service dot remove user from row. This one here, we have the user ID here and the row ID. That's what we got here. So we just have to we get to return this here. Just return it. Okay, cool. Now the last but not the least is going to be similar to this. So because of that, I'm just going to welcome to copy and paste. Welcome to copy and paste. Okay, cool. So now we're just going to change this to assign user to row. Assign user to row. It's going to have the same parameters as this. This one here, we're just going to say assign users to row, the same thing. And here, this one, we're going to say assign user to. We're going to change this one to here, to assign user to row. So this is what we just got here. This is what we got here. This is what we got here. This is what we got here. Delete. So now we have finished implementing our this one is going to be constructor injection, so let's make it finer so that the annotation can pick it up for us. Cool. So now you see it's highlighted because this annotation we only inject fields that are finer, non-static finer fields. Okay, cool. So far so good. We are done with the implementation of this. So the next thing we're going to do is to let's visit our user. There's something I want us to do here, because right now we have added the row API, and if we go to our user service here, if we go here, we see that this is the method that is adding, and this is the method that is removing, right? So we're going to make some modification to this method. Now, the first modification we're going to make to this method here is going to come from this record here. So you know we are returning only this from the record. So now we are going to return also a set of user row, right? A set of row for the user. When we are returning the user, we're going to return a set of row for the user as well. So we just say rows here. Yeah, so let's do the import. Yeah, this one here. Rows, this one is row. So this is the record we created last time when in the previous video, right? To return our entity, to return our user entity for us. So now here I'm going to include our rows here. So I'm just going to say new hash set, because we are returning a set of user rows. So we just say user to get rows. So this is all we need to do here to actually return the rows for us, right? And now, having done this, we're going to come back here. So I want every user that is created, when a user is created by default, it should have the row of a user, right? So that's what we're going to do. So for now, for that, I'm just going to have I'm going to create I'm going to get the row here. I'm going to have something like row here equals row repository. So we're going to have the repository here. Maybe should we have the service? No. I prefer, let's have the repository. So we're just going to say row private final, because we're going to inject, right? Row, damn, not row, it's row repository. Yeah, so we just call this one row repository. Damn, what happened? Row repository. Yeah, this one here. So here we're just going to say row repository dot find by name. This one we created last time, right? Find by name. And I want the user to have the row of user by default. Any user that is created by default should have the row of a user, right? So that's what I'm trying to do here. Then having done this, this one is optional, right? So let's put our extra get to make it happy. So having done this now, so I'm just going to call, the, so we're actually going to, what we're going to do here is to, sorry, what I'm saying. So we're going to call this user here to set. So user dot set row, dot set rows, collection of rows here. And we're going to pass in row, this row here, right? Does this, no, So we're going to say this one is going to be a collection because we are actually, it's actually expecting a collection right here. Let's see, user dot, you see here is actually expecting a collection of row. So let's say collections dot singleton list here, and here we have row dot get. Okay, cool. It's not optional here, so well, okay, we've already gotten here, so there's no point of doing here. So now what we just did here is that any user we created by default is going to have the row of a user, which means this row of this user row must be existing in the database before any user is created. So when the application is created, when the application, our project is up and running, this row must be in a database. If not, we're going to have an error. Not fun. No such elements. Maybe not a pointer exception or something like that. Okay. So now what we just need to do, I think we are done with our implementation. So we're going to test run this project to see if there are some errors that we need to fix, that we fix them and we test our project. So now let's run our project. Oh, here we have an error saying here method split java.lang.string. Okay, we have changed our row from string to entity, so we're going to make this one to string, right? Okay, that's solved the problem. So let's run it again and see what we got. Okay, so now we see that our application has started running. There is something I did behind the scene I would like to show you. If you look here, we have all our formatted SQL queries in here in the console, right? So I did something here. Actually, I changed, this one was on update. So remember to change this one to create so that it can create the new table. Though it will be created anyway, even if it's in update, it will be created. But for some reasons, I just have to recreate to make our database fresh, right? So change this to create, and also you can put this line of code here. This one is the one that actually showing the formatted SQL here. This is the line that is doing that job here. Okay, so these are the things I do behind the scene. So now we see that our application is up and running. So let's go to Postman to actually see what we have got so far. So here is Postman, and this is the library collection we created last time during the JWT authentication we did. And now this is the same thing we're going to do here. So the first thing we're going to do here is to, before this, I'm going to open up our database. Let's open our database. And this is the database we are using, library, and here is the row. There's the row. Here we see row here. A new table has been created for us called row. And this is the user table we got before here. And this is the third table we created to actually track the user ID and the row ID, this is the joint table. So before we go to Postman for testing, let's actually go here. Let's go to reverse engineering. So reverse engineer, so we can actually see the structure of our database right now in here, our table right now in here. So here I'm just going to select our table, our database, and click on next again. Here we have 4 tables in our database, so we just click on execute, okay, next, and finish. So here we see that, let me make this one bold a little bit. So here we see that we've gotten this is the row table, this is the user, and this is the table that actually joins the user and row together here. Now we can see that the user has many to many relationship with row. This is the row, this is the user, and this is the table that is tracking them, and this is the book. We're not going to do anything here. Our purpose today is this row here, right? So now this is the current structure of our database. So let's go back to here and actually go back to Postman and see what we have got so far. Now our database is empty. So this is user here. Let's try to get all users. So we'll get all users here, and we see that our found empty array, right? Nothing inside. So let's add a new user. Before then, we remember that every user that is created is going to have a row of users. So before then, which means we're going to create. I've created this collection here already. So the first thing we're going to do here is to create row. So here I'm going to create that user row here. This is going to be user, and now I'm going to send the post. Oh, forbidden. Forbidden. Need authentication. Okay, I forgot. I remember something. I forgot to declare this in our security configuration. You know, last time we've already configured our application to use security, and so right here. So we're going this one. Remember last time we declared this here as unsecured row, unsecured endpoint. So we are going to add the row here, rows / anything, right? So that is what we're just going to do here. So remember, this is the configuration we made last time, and it's actually tracking. So we have the unsecured URL and the secured URL. So this one here are the unsecured URL that need no authentication before we go. Okay, so I'm going to close this down. Please, if you have not watched this video, how we did all these things, I really encourage you. I'm going to leave this link below this video. So I really encourage you to watch that video. It's very useful. So now I'm going to quickly run this again to see what we got. So now the application has started again. So let's go back to Postman. So now this Postman. So let's try to create this again and see if it works or not. Okay, now we got 201 created, right? So, and this row is user, and it got no users. So now let's create a user. So now we can actually create a user. So let's go here to add a new user here. So I'm going to create Rita Alfred and rita@gmail.com, then Rita 111001. So if we create this right now, we're going to see what happened. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is Stack Overflow. Stack servlet exception. This should be what? This should be Stack Overflow something related issue. Illegal state exception. Okay. Yes, Stack Overflow here. None. Actually, let's go to our database and see what happened. So now is the user created? What happened? I'm going to close all, and let's select our user again. Okay, so the user is created. So let's check the row. So here we have, what is the row? Here we have the user row created, and let's check the user row. Yeah, the user is added to the user. So user is added to the row number 1, which is the only row we have here, and the user number 1 is the only user we have, and it's actually added here. The problem, I think, is trying to, because here we are trying to return. Let's go back to the code. Okay, this is the code. So here, where is the after creation, where is it? So add user. So after creation, we're trying to return the user. But the problem, I think, was that in the process of trying to return the user, this user actually has, let's go back to our annotation. Let's visit the annotation here. Where is the user? The user here. So this user, we say that when we are loading the user, it should be eager loading. It should load all the rows of all the associated row, right? And now if we go back to row, because we are mapping here, right? We are using mapping. So this guy here is doing the same thing with what this guy is doing. So this one here is trying to load the rows. And when he's trying to load the rows, when the row is loading, and the row also is trying to load the user alongside, so it becomes something that is not possible. So now the user is trying to load rows, rows is trying to load users, right? So what we're just going to do to break this here, we're going to use a JSON annotation. So we just say add JSON ignore. We're going to use this one here to ignore. We're going to tell this guy, don't worry about this. We are telling the row, hey, don't worry about this, right? Just load yourself and don't load this guy here. So now the user will be able to load this one when coming, right? So now, because this one is a bidirectional, it's a bidirectional relationship, right? We can access user from row, we can access row from user. So it's a bidirectional relationship. So now, having done this, now we're quickly going to, no, I don't want to lose our data. So what I just want to do here is to, I'm going to go to properties and change this from create to update. I don't want to lose this data anymore. So I'm just going to say update here. So this updated. So now let's actually run it and see what we got. All right, so we see that our our application has started running. Let's quickly swing over to Postman and see what happens. So now we have created a user with this name. So we're going to create another user called John. John, this one is H. John Bosco. And let's have this. Why did I say that name? So let's have John. And let's say John 100, John at 1001, right? So let's create this. Let's see if we can get it back or not. Boom. So it works, right? Correct. So now we can get the user and the row of the user. So now let's get all users from the database. We see that we're going to have 2 users with the row of users, right? So now we have rows of users here. So now the first one we're going to test right now. So let's test create row here. Let's test get all row. Get all rows here. So let's get all rows in the database. So we say get all. So we have just one row, right? So let's test create a new row. So now I'm going to create a row called admin. So let's put it there, and I'm going to create another row called students, right? Okay, now let's get all rows again and see how many rows we've gotten in the database. So here, oh my gosh, what happened? Create row. No, okay, this one is already in existence, right? So I mean get all rows, not create row. So let's get all rows here. So here we have 3 rows in a database. So let's actually confirm it here. So let's go here and refresh. So we have 3 rows in our database, and now we have 1 user, right? No, we should have 2 users by now. Cool. So here we have 2 users. So now let's go and test. So now we have users in the database and we have row. So let's test assign rows to user. So we have user number 2 is John Bosco. Then we have row number 3. What is row number 3? Is it admin or student? Maybe student. So let's just assign, but I believe we have a row with ID number 3. Cool, we have it. Yeah, the student is number 3, right? So now John Bosco has gotten 2 rows here. You can see here now John Bosco has gotten 2 rows, right? John Bosco and row user and row student. So let's add another row to John Bosco. So row number 2, which is the admin row. And here we go. So now this guy has 3 rows. So let's again, let's get all users from our database, get all users. And here we have this user has only 1 row, but this user has 3 rows, right? So which means assign row is working. So let's remove user from row. Remove a user from row. So I'm going to remove user number 2 from row of students. So I'm going to remove John Bosco from student row. So now John Bosco is going to left with 2 rows, right? So here we have the admin row. Okay, row number 2 is admin, not 3. So now this guy now is remain with the row of a user and row of a student. So if we go back here to get all users again, we're going to see that he has been removed. Okay, so now we see he's left with 2 rows, right? So which means remove row is working, assign row is working. So now let's delete a row. Now this student row is being used by John Bosco, right? Before we delete this, let's assign the same row to Rita. Rita is 1. Rita has ID number 1, and that row is what is it? Assign row to user. This one here. So the user with ID number 1 and the row with ID number 3. That is number 3, right? So let's go. And here we successfully added this row to Rita. So let's get Rita and John. So here we have them 2 rows each. Now I'm going to delete. Let's test delete. Delete the row of a student with ID number 3. So let's delete student row here. So it's already here. The one I did some times ago. So it's the same thing. It coincided with the row number. So let's delete row number 3. So here 200 OK. So now let's get all users to see if they are still having this row here. Let's retrieve. So now we see that this row has been deleted and the user are left with 1 row each. So let's actually go back to confirm in our database. So here we have 3 rows. Let's refresh. So we see that the student row has gone away. And if we go back here, if we go here, we refresh, we see that user number 1 has 1 row, user number 2 has 1 row, right? Okay, so the last one we're going to test, we remove all users from row. So now we have a user, we have a row called user, and we have 2 users attached to that row. So now let's remove every users from that row. And that row is number 1, right? I think it's number 1. Let's get all rows. Let's refresh. So students is number 1. User is number 1. So let's remove all users from that row. Remove all. Forbidding. Something has happened. What happened? Let me check the message. Let me go to the console to see if we got the message there. Oh my gosh, no message. What happened? Now let me try to see remove all users from row. Let me copy this to confirm if it will work. Copy and remove all users from what it seems to be the same. So what happened? Okay, so let me save it. So let's try it again if that is the problem. Okay, cool. So there's a problem here. Okay, so now the row has been returned. So let's go back to our users. Let's get all users to see if they are still having this row because they have been removed from that row. So you see they have been removed from all the rows. So now they have no rows, right? So let's go to our database and refresh. If we refresh right now, we see that everything is gone. So our user right now has no row. So now we have 2 rows here and we have 2 users here, but they don't have rows. So now we have seen how we can manage our users and our rows. Adding new rows to user, remove users from row, so on and so forth. Creating new rows and so on and so forth. I think that is the goal of this demo. And thank you so much for being around. And I really hope to see you again in our subsequent video. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you've not done that. And please help me share my channel and introduce my channel to your friends. Thank you so much. And hope to see you again in our subsequent video. Happy coding. Goodbye.